Mats, part 2. All right, so we went through the introduction of alpha mats and luma mats, still image and motion. You're really not going to benefit from just watching my movie on those if you're not playing around in your own version of After Effects with that file. You got to just do it to see it. And don't expect, whoa, where'd that come from? Don't expect to get it right away. You're going to have to experiment in order for you to understand how and when those relationships exist. Okay, so I'm going to continue with the end of this track mats video, which is going to introduce to you some ideas of how you could benefit from track mat use in a more creative environment as opposed to just slapping it on a layer and seeing what happens. So if you are using that track mats After Effects file, you'll see that there is a third folder called O3 boxes and bars. And the first thing I want to look at is the bars movie. And the bars movie is, if I look at the composition settings, it's very wide, 2,500 pixels wide by 486 tall. This is only to make sure that it accommodates our current size of default project, which is the NTSC D1 widescreen square pixel, which maxes out at a height of 486. So what I have here are 8 solids that I made. So just rectangles that are moving along the x-axis all throughout this 5 seconds time. If I just played it, here we go. That does not feel like real time to me. It looks like it's really chopping. I'm currently uploading a video to YouTube, so maybe the computer is just being lazy. So I'm working it too hard. But you get the idea. These different rectangles are moving left and right, left and right. If I were to select all of them and hit the letter P for position, you'll see that each one has been instructed at various different times throughout the 5 seconds to go back and forth in different directions, faster, slower, and so on. Let's close that back up. So this has a lot of movement. Notice that the rectangles are only rectangles, yet they have a color variation of grayscale from white to a dark gray. This should start your mind thinking about how could I use this in a comp. Before we get anywhere, I'd like to go to the bars scene, which is a comp. Let's go down to the bars scene and take a look at what I have here, which is bars that are moving, but they're also moving within the frame. And that is a really good example of a nesting of comps, where this composition contains the other composition of the bars. The bars that we know are just bars moving back and forth. But in the bars scene, not only are they moving back and forth, but they're also changing location and scale, and location and scale. And that is because I have instructed this layer, which is the flattened composition of the bars. I'm going to hit the letter U on my keypad to see what's happening. I have animated scale and position to change. And they're either hold keyframes or they're just standard keyframes. You can actually see the animation, the movement change over time. But other than that, they are strictly popping, pop, 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 and moving, holding, and then moving. So what happens if I take a video layer and I put it behind this composition. In the movies folder, I have something that I made specifically today just for this, which is a little, where did that just go? Why don't I see it anymore? Did I just move it? I guess I did, by accident. It's a few clips out of a movie called The Art of Flight, which is a really beautiful snowboarding video. I'm going to drag that to the bottom of the comp. So my bars are on top. And this is a pretty long composition, or not the footage layer. You could move it forward by grabbing the meat of the layer. It's kind of fun right there, so that you get the right spot. Actually, I don't even know if that's the right thing. I'm just going to keep moving it forward, moving it forward. I'm just there. That's kind of cool. Move it forward until I see the shredding. There we go. And all I'm doing there is I'm just grabbing the layer itself and shifting it forward or backwards to align a part of the clip that I want to respond with. So from what we know before is that those moving bars contain pixel information and transparent information. That would mean that I could definitely get a track matte from the bottom layer, which contains the snowboarder, to the top layer that contains the bars by just saying, let's see what's in those bars. And now the movie clip will only be shown by what's in those bars. And that's, that's kind of cool. A little bit. It's not timed perfectly because there's no one in those shots. There's a bunch of snow. But it starts to make more sense as we get halfway through. So maybe I would just move that clip even more forward until the guy appears, and then we get, some shredding going on. Let me cut to the helicopter. Whatever. So there, the bars are all equally present in their opacity. If I were to change that to Luma matte, all of a sudden we get a little bit of a variation. It still only shows the movie in those bars, but you can tell that there's some things happening as those gray scale bars move across, and that is that they are showing up in different transparencies. I should zoom in a little bit. Well, that helps, because your movie's probably tiny anyways. Oh, the things I forget about while I'm teaching. So look at, you get some solid portions and some not so solid as far as transparency goes. And that is because we're looking at the bars which have grayscale information. So I could obviously say, let's look at the Luma inverted, and it's going to invert them. And now those are holes punched in the video clip instead of having the video clip hosted by that information. Same thing would be true if I chose alpha inverted, only now there's no variation of opacity in there. Am I happy with this clip? Sure. Okay, so that's the bars, moving bars. And this is just something to get you thinking, how could I make a really cool product? I could animate bars, no problem. That's just an X value of position. They can be different opacities or different shades of gray. And then they can be tracked as a Luma matte. Now, what really helps is if I think about what's behind there, So obviously I want to say, let's look at maybe space. Put space back there. Are you responding, computer? Yes, you are. So there's space in the background, and then the snowboarder is revealed on top of the space. I'm not real wild about that, but it's something. It's a start. I'm just going to delete you so that I have something to do later. If I look at the boxes comp, the boxes, blow you up, is very similar to the moving bars, but it's just some boxes that kind of pop around. I drew them each with a shape layer tool, so they're each their own layer, box 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if I was to do a select all, Command A, and then hit U for what keyframes are used, you'll see that they are hold keyframes and just changing the rotation, scale, and position to give me a rather unique popping effect. Pop, 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 pop. Now, if you're thinking ahead, you might say, cool, what can I do with something like this with some video? And I just want to go back a few steps to make sure you understand something. I would not want to put my video in this comp because I could only interact with one box. For example, if I took my Art of Flight clip and I brought it in here and I said, hey, cool, it's going to be awesome. I want to go to the alpha track mat of the boxes. And I chose alpha mat box 1. Well, it only gives me one choice. I could only choose the layer directly above the video layer, my target layer. So I wouldn't want to do that. I'd want to put it in a nested comp so that all those boxes are represented by one layer. That's what we did with the bar scene. So here we go. I've made a relationship, and I go, shoot, that's not what I wanted to do. A few things you got to think about. As soon as you activate a track mat for a layer, it instantly turns the layer above it into a track mat and turns its visibility off. So if I said, oh, darn it, I forgot, I got to get rid of this. I'm going to select it. I'm going to hit delete. Well, that box layer, number 1, is not visible and wouldn't be visible in a nested comp. So I need to make sure that I turn its visibility back on so that it's active. That's what happens when you choose track mat. It takes the layer above it and turns it off. So if I go to box scene, here are the boxes represented, zoom in, represented as an individual flat layer, which means if I take the Art of Flight now, and I'll go find another clip, get past the helicopter, keep dragging. Is this cool? No, this is kind of cool. Why did I put all that stuff in there? I'll go right from there. I will choose show me the alpha mat. And now that guy is only visible inside those moving boxes. Pretty fun. And I could just put him right back on top of that footage. Look what happens if I double up the footage, but I have time asynchronous. So now I've got snowboarding on top of snowboarding, but the bottom layer is full view and the layer above it is only showing it inside of the boxes because I told it to be an alpha mat of the boxes layer. I'll get rid of the background. So now I have this guy shredding. And then I have one more comp called master. And this is where you start to think about editing. And this is merely a composition that has nested in it the bars and the box scenes just kind of cut up so that I'm getting some motion, some zoom changes, different footage happening. And what the result would be is kind of a cool composite of different information that is not restricted to the rectangle that we're so familiar with. It looks sweet. Something's awry though. I feel like this is not a widescreen. It's not. There we go. Yeah. Now we're talking. Perfect. So don't worry about doing that. I'll fix that comp before I package it and post it for you to use. But again, it's just on black. So I'd want to think, what is the background about? Is it something that's juxtaposed in nature? Could it be on fire? Do I have a fire? I do have a fire. Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it? You know, snowboarding on top of fire. Look at the crazy stuff we do. Unfortunately, this fire clip is shorter, so it doesn't last as long. I could duplicate it and just keep moving it over so that it did last. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool. You're thinking about fire and snow, something terrifying yet exhilarating. That's kind of fun to think about, that relationship. And there's some really cool frames in there too. So very basic shapes that you animate that become the vessel of displaying information, just so it's not so straightforward and confined by the box that we're so used to seeing. It brings more motion, more layers, and a more dynamic experience to our audience, which is super cool. So play around with those different comps and see what sort of relationships you can get between video and different layers. Just one last thing I'll do, I guess. I'll get rid of these. You go away. Let's go to the bars. Let's go to the bars. I'm going to get rid of you. Make sure that you're visible. And here. So one thing you could ultimately do is say, let's take the under the sea, and just for now I'm just going to make it the size of the comp, which is going to be crazy. It's going to stretch the living daylights out of it, but Command Option F, and I'm just going to make that one live to the luma of the layer directly above it. And where is it? It's in there. Barely see it. And then I'll take something like cityscapes and I'll put it above that. So I'm alternating. I'm going to say, hey, you go to the luma of that layer, and I'll stretch it so it fits. And then I'll get the space and I'll put it in the layer above that one, and I'll stretch it so it fits and say, hey, you track yourself to the luma of the layer above you. And then the real explosions, you go here, stretch it so it fits. Luma Matte, Nature's Fury, come here. Nature's Fury, you're going to go here, stretch you out, choose Luma Matte. Lighting effects, stretch you out. Luma Matte. Lifestyles, Tai Chi guy, stretch you out. Luma Matte. Only one more. Go with the city one. Put you here. Luma Matte, and make sure I stretch you out. So now what I have is a whole bunch of different bars that are only showing the specific video layer that I assigned to it. So if you look at the structure of this, it's a solid and then a video clip, and they have a relationship. A solid and a video clip, they have a relationship. Each solid is turned off once I establish that relationship, and if I go to bars scene, I have a look at what this is. All of these different video clips are represented now as a single layer, and they come in and define themselves by the grayscale information of the clip, and they start to bleed together a little bit because each bar kind of has different transparencies, so you'll see through them. But it's really kind of a unique way to get information on screen. If you remember the SNL, Saturday Night Live intro, over the last like 8 years, they used this technique like crazy, where they were putting different information inside moving bars, and then they even have like these bars moving inside the letters SNL. How would you do that? I would use my text tool, and I would click on screen and type the words SNL. Maybe I don't want that font though. What would I want? How about a good old Century Gothic, bold, nice and fat, big old guy. So here is text. The text exists for the entire duration of my comp. How would I get those bars into those letters? I would put the bars at the bottom. I would say, all right, bars, show up only in the information that is present for those letters, which is alpha. And now SNL is visible by all that moving information back there. It would make more sense if it was like on top of maybe my turquoise. You can see it a little bit better. SNL, today's host, Greg Twig. All right, you get the idea? Very cool things can happen, but you need to remember the structure. So here I've structured it so that each bar has its own video layer as opposed to the boxes being on their own and then condensed into a single layer where the video is shown in all of the boxes at once. All right, have fun. This is cool stuff. I hope you're getting excited.